There's a definite change in the air. Many of the schools have gone back. Exam results are out and others are preparing to return to study next month. The period of waiting is over. Blackberries are ripening and usually we would be settling in for a good moan about living in Edinburgh during August. Except, well, as you know, there's no festival. Who'd have thought we would have missed the flyers and the posters, the endless tourists, people blocking the pavement, crowding round jugglers and mime artists, and the festival pulpit, and the choir, and the concerts, and the book festival. I've come here in the vestry to film this sermon today. I'll let you into a secret. In the past, if you needed me and I wasn't around, I would often be in here. The rest of the building was always full of people. There were visitors in the main church. There were people praying silently in the chapel. There were those people who had let the hall and people in the cafe, staff upstairs in the office, people drinking in the gardens. And this became my God space. I've not really been here in a while, not for just sitting here and talking to God. But now when I come to film the sermon, it does feel as though, well, the building is slowly coming back to life. I thought about where I could film this week, and there are people at the kiosk in the lower terrace. There's going to be an art installation in the hall this coming week as part of the Just Festival. There are people walking around and sitting and enjoying the gardens. There's a kind of half normality to life. There have been many memes doing the round recently, all saying, oh, can we not just forget about 2020 and move on? But of course, what we're all beginning to realise is that we are not at the end. And however much we would wish for all this to pass, we're still in the middle of it. This season is going to continue, and we need to dig in for the long term. Throughout this time, we who are made in the image of God, we humans, we are always seeking meaning, seeking to place ourselves as the people of God in this time and this place, and how our identity should shape our behaviour. Alongside this, we as a church have been following the people of Israel through the story of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, as they begin to know something of who God is. God seems to be with them so strongly. Yet here we are at the end of the story of Joseph, a story in which God is not absent, but certainly doesn't reveal himself in burning bushes or wrestling angels. When I think of Joseph's story, I see how in control he keeps himself, the self-control needed to overcome the trauma of being sold into slavery, of making a space for himself in Egypt, of surviving false accusations, of prison, and then rising through the ranks to the position of ultimate authority and trust as Pharaoh's right-hand man. I wonder how he did it. Did he feel comforted by his visions, his dreams? Did he know that God was there with him? Do we, reading this story, have a feeling that God was in control? In today's passage, Joseph finally loses control. He cries. His brothers cry. Nothing is held back. It's such an emotional reunion and the beginnings of a reconciliation. And perhaps for Joseph and his family, and certainly for us as the reader, we see now with hindsight how God was working through every situation. And us? Are we far enough along in this COVID thing to have any benefit of hindsight? Personally, I think we are still in the middle of Joseph's story. We need to keep up our self-control, to grimace at the thought of wearing face coverings in church and not being able to sing, while rejoicing that we can come into the building again. To delight at seeing each other while accepting that we can't socialise. To plan hopefully for the autumn while also preparing ourselves for going back into lockdown. The now and the not yet. And as Christians, we should be good at that. After all, a large part of our theology is that God's kingdom is coming on earth and we get to see it happening, while at the same time we are praying and waiting for the time when God's rule will be evident on earth. We live in that tension. And in the midst of the now and the not yet, it's hard to keep control while also being open to emotions. As Marcus challenged us last week, it's hard to resist the urge to sit with God in a comfy chair with a cuppa or a glass of something stronger, and to realise how we live in our privileged bubbles. It's hard to actively try to pop those and open ourselves up to God's unexpected blessing and life-changing love. We need to learn how to weep uncontrollably when need be, while still keeping in control. To live life to the full whilst fully complying with the rules. To worship with all our heart and to practice outrageous hospitality, whether in person or digitally. No, we are not at the end of the Joseph story. But we need to remember that God is with us, even when we can't see it. And we need to make sure that we keep on coming and sitting in the God spaces and being open to whatever will happen next.